Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell. My guest today is William Forchion. When it comes to performance art, William Forchion is a jack of all trades and master of many, as I'm sure many people in our community know. Storyteller, stuntman, actor, filmmaker, circus performer, now a podcaster. Bill has done so many different things. And in addition to all of that, he's part of the U.S. Cultural Exchange as an ambassador of the arts. He's also a writer, a Reiki master, and a minister. He's lived in Brattleboro for almost 20 years now and has created his own Billosophy, which we're going to hear about. Welcome, Bill.
Wow, that sounds so fantastic.
As you are. And I just want the audience to know also, Bill and I did not plan our outfits together, but we just happened to coincide on the color spectrum.
We enhance each other, I think.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Oh, well, it's both from my point of view as well, Bill. You were born in New Jersey, but southern New Jersey.
South Jersey?
Yeah.
You know, the garden part of the Garden
That's
State.
right. Uh-huh.
I grew up in Hamilton, New Jersey, which is the blueberry capital of the world.
Really?
Yes, it is. And that was one of my first jobs, was picking blueberries. I still like blueberries, even though that was the first job.
Yeah.
I grew up on 10 acres of land with my brother and sister. I'm the youngest of three, and my parents. Mm-hmm. We had lots of animals, so it was country living. Mm-hmm. And also one of the reasons why I settled in Brattleboro, because I wanted that country living. Uh-huh. And at the time, my wife, this is near where her family was, uh-huh. and it was country that would do. And so it's become home.
So when you were a kid, did you have performance in your bones?
No, not at all. No. No, my mother was a school teacher. My father he was a welder, did a lot of other things, but mainly blue collar work. And performance was not in the family. Mm-hmm. I remember my first performance, which was probably the third grade, and it was a fall play, and I had some lines to say, and I had stage fright. So I lost all my lines, and I just made up something on the spot because I was panicking, and everyone thought it was wonderful, and the teacher said it was better than I'd ever done it before, and I have no idea what came out of me. Uh-huh. And that I say to everyone after becoming a performer was the first and last time I had stage fright.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So there was something in you that this was a means of expression that really worked for you.
Yeah. And I've used many different ways in performance to express myself, and each one seems valid and viable, and it seems very much a part of me.
Yeah.
Like there's no part. I haven't done any performances where I go, I don't know why I did that. It just seems like each of those represents different aspects of my personality and comes out in that way. For me, I believe it started as in acting with different characters. Mm-hmm. And because I would hear people say, "Oh, I can't do that. That's not me," and I realized that I could play many different parts. All I had to do was turn that little dial in me and go, "Okay, I'm going to be the bad guy, or I'm going to be this," and because each of those things. Instead of it being the bad guy, it's the person who has a need that doesn't align with what everyone else's needs are. Uh-huh. So it was not about being a bad guy. It was about getting a need and having no one else regarded in the process of fulfilling that need. Then that was the bad guy. And also dealing with emotions of going through anger, fear, frustration, happiness, joy, sadness. Those are all things that could be motivating a character. And if they didn't align with everyone else, then that either made them, a dark character or a light character, or a happy or sad, or the protagonist or the antagonist. Was it in line with what everybody wants, and was it out of line? Uh-huh. And so that I say also that helped me stay sane.
Well, I was going to say, it's such a fascinating thing that you're talking about, because so many actors talk about embodying the character or living that character for as long as they're in that role. Mm-hmm. But you're saying something quite different.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that each of those characters is me. Uh-huh. It's not. I'm not playing a character. Mm-hmm. I'm being me.
You become that.
I am that, and it's not. I don't have to act out that in the world.
Yeah.
Like if I'm in a theater production, while I'm in rehearsals, I'm that person. I'm living that life. I'm seeing with those eyes. And if I'm in a movie, I read through the script and I understand what the motivations are.
Yeah.
And I am that person.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful to be able to, hear a cut and then just shut that person off. And know that they're loved and cared for, and that they are a portion of who I am.
Yes. So they're not estranged from
No.
your experience either.
No. And they don't fight for their existence, because in that moment they get to live fully.
Yeah. Also, I would imagine that this takes a certain, a very honed sense of different types of people and different personalities.
It takes I think it takes a lived sense as
Yeah.
opposed to honed. And maybe in living it, it's honing it.
Yeah.
But I love to watch people. I love to experience people.
Yeah.
Just having a conversation with my brother. He's 2 years older than I am, and he was saying, "Oh, that person's so crazy," and I said, "They're just getting their needs met."
Yeah.
And those needs aren't in alignment with yours. And so I think also part of it is just kind of loving each of those people, loving that, we aren't in alignment. I don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, but I know that you're doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
And that I hope that you get what you're seeking in that process.
Did you ever did you ever play a character or in one of your roles that was really difficult for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had to think that one through, but yeah. And the reason why I say yeah is because in the beginning of my acting career, my stunt work, and doing film and television, the first role I had was on the TV show Nash Bridges, and I was a bodyguard for some bad guy. So I was a bad guy's bad guy. I was a real thug, and I was thug number 2. And I just was so excited. I told my parents, "Mom, I'm thug number 2." And how do you become thug number 2? Thug number 2's job was to protect the bad guy, the big boss bad guy. And I just remember people saying, "But what kind of role model are you being?" And I went, "Oh, the character isn't the role model.
Right.
I'm the role model. I'm the actor who can portray that character.
That's right.
I can step into that role fully." And is there someone in the real world that is like thug number 2? Yes,
Yeah.
there is. Are they lovable, likable? Probably not. Maybe to someone. And my job in that space is to portray them as real as possible, not a caricature, but a real
That's right.
thing.
That's right.
All of these roles gave me experience, somewhat in who I am, what is my deal breaker? What role won't I take? What jobs won't I do? Also in the performing or in the production side of it, one of the things I used to love doing was I'd go to the director and I'd say, "Can I sit behind you and watch how a director directs a set?" I would sit with the producers and talk to the producers. What is involved in making, a Warner Brothers movie or a Paramount movie from these producers? That's what they do, and they're bazillionaires. And I would ask if I could sit behind them, because that was my film school.
Yeah. Right.
To be working on the set, and I'd be working as a stuntman or an actor, a lowly role, not a principal usually.
Yeah.
And yet I would say I would see it as an opportunity.
Yes.
An opportunity to learn from everybody. And I would do that with not just producers and directors. I would talk to the grips, and I would talk to everyone involved, because I wanted to know how all the pieces fit together.
Right.
When it was time for me to do my production, I want to know every aspect of it.
That's
so
right.
that I can put it all together and know what is involved.
Yeah, well, there's a real curiosity there of how this thing works, right? And all of those different aspects. How did Circus come into this?
Oy. I'm laughing at that because Circus comes in as the common way I say it is a lot of mistakes happened and I ended up in the circus. I went to New York City to study theater at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. I'm one of those folks who likes musical theater and wanted to be on Broadway. So I ended up in New York studying musical theater. And by the time I graduated, I was kind of fried from all the training. It's a real conservatory kind of process. So acting, singing, dancing, classical dance, classical voice, ballet, operas, modern voice and musical theater voice, all these things, but everything. There's demonstrations every 2 weeks, and then at the end of the session, each semester there's a big demonstration, and you're just constantly run through the ringer to see if you've got technique. And I was auditioning also at the time. This is in the late 80s. I finished in AMDA in 1988, and I was auditioning for summer theater work and other theater projects. And I would get through the auditions, and they'd say, you're great, and I'd get the call back, and you're great, but next year we're doing Showboat, and there's a role for you there, or next year we're doing X, Y, and Z, and there wasn't a lot of casting for a young black actor who's 6'4", 200 pounds. I didn't fit in the chorus, and so that was frustrating.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine who I'd gone to AMDA with had invited me to go to his audition. He wanted to be a clown desperately. He'd auditioned 3 years in a row for Ringling Brothers Circus, and they were at Madison Square Garden, and he invited me to come to the audition just to support him.
Yeah.
And I went, and I had a blast.
Yeah.
And the director of Clown College asked me to send in my application. I told him I wasn't interested at all. I'm an actor. And then I finally sent in my application. They accepted me. I chose not to go because I wanted to be a lifeguard at that time. I was basically had been a lifeguard my own, through my teens, and I wanted a job as an oceanfront lifeguard for the the Department of the Interior, the Parks Department. And I got that job, so I chose not to go to Clown College and work at the Great Kills National Park as an oceanfront lifeguard. The following year, I auditioned again and went, and I thought, 1 year in the circus, and I'll get back into musical theater. And 30-something years later, and
wow.
I'm still doing circus.
So you got hooked.
I got hooked.
Yeah, you did. And what was it about circus in particular? Because you were Ringling Brothers and then Cirque du Soleil, so you did quite a circuit.
And so Ringling Brothers was my first role in circus as a clown, and I just took that conservatory attitude towards my clowning as well. So after each show, I would rehearse, I'd practice my juggling, I'd practice my pratfalls, and I was just trying to make myself a better clown with the technique of clowning, and other performers started seeing that. So there was a teeterboard act, a Bulgarian teeterboard act, and they were like, "Oh, we like the way you approach this." And so they were saying, "Have you stood on anyone's shoulders?" I said, "No." "And has anyone stood on yours?" I said, "No." And so they started stacking their acrobats on my shoulders and teaching me how to do that well. And one of the wire walkers, Pedro Carrillo Jr., had invited me to walk on the wire because he's like, "You're a circus. You need to know everything."
Yeah.
And so he put me on the wire. I started walking on the wire, and I just started learning new skills. And
right.
I felt welcomed. I felt invited by the other circus performers, and I really liked that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's more of a family atmosphere. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, it sounds like you went through the gamut of all of the different circus arenas that you could be in.
I went from working. I worked at the Big Apple Circus Clown Care Unit, which is clowning in the hospitals, and which one of the hospitals I worked at was a Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is a cancer hospital, and that educated me more than any other thing in the business about performing, because in that role, it wasn't about being a clown in the hospitals. It was about showing up first. The makeup and the costume was one thing. It was so out of place in a hospital that all you had to do was show up. You didn't have to do any work. Yeah. And that, to me, was really fantastic.
Yes.
It was about just being there.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, that term showing up is 90% of the job, that really was. Is
it was literal
up. Yeah,
in
it
this
really
case.
was.
Yes.
Yeah. And But I also then went to San Francisco, trained with Master Lu Yi, who was a Chinese acrobatics instructor, and I was his assistant for 5 years in Chinese acrobatics. So I learned how to do Chinese acrobatics, how to teach Chinese acrobatics, and then went on to work with Cirque du Soleil as an acrobat.
Yeah. Wow. Phew.
Yeah.
It's quite an amazing bunch of things. You were or have been a U.S. ambassador
Yes.
of the arts, and
Yes.
what did that entail?
The United States State Department took a trip to Turkmenistan with 2 other circus artists, where we exchanged information with the Turkmen Department of Ministry Circus program, which is their national circus school, and also the Turkmen National Circus. Since I've been in the circus, one of the things that I do, and I think I got it from my mother, is no matter what you're doing, you're an ambassador for that. And you're also an ambassador. She always tells us, you're ambassador for the Forchion family when you step into whatever realm you step into. And so I always think of, no matter what I'm doing, I'm an ambassador for that thing that I'm doing.
Yes.
And so in this sense, working in Turkmenistan, I was sharing what we have here in Circus, and also opening myself up to their history and their experience,
Right.
because it wasn't a one-sided thing. I wasn't just bringing over
Yes.
only our culture, but accepting what their culture was. And it's really beautiful that the Turkmen circus is based in an equestrian thing, so horsemanship, which means that the basis for circus in Turkmenistan, the basis for circus in America, where it started, is all the same. The ring is the same size because it's the size of a horse running at a gallop.
Oh.
And so it can comfortably do that and not break stride. And so that was the same, and it was really great to talk to folks, because they had in theirs the equestrian riders, and also how that transfers into the world, because the Russians had been in that region for a great period of time, and the Turkmen all see themselves as Kazakhs. So you know of Kazakhstan. And so the riding that they do is called Kazakh riding. Even in Turkmenistan, the Turkmen rides, the Turkmen Jigit is the riders, are Kazakh riders. And the Russians have taken that, and they have Cossack riding. And Cossack is taken from, because they trained horsemanship in Asia with the Kazakh riders, and they've taken that, and the Russian version of Kazakh is Cossack. And so the basis of Russian circus is also the same as the basis of Kazakh or Turkmen circus, and the basis of American circus. And I just think that that's beautiful, because we're all related.
You're all related, and rich histories on both sides. You wrote a book, Bill, called Billosophy, Meditations on God, Movement, and Miracles. I think we've talked about a lot of those things in this short conversation so far. But one thing that I think was impressive, and also sort of a real center for this, is this phrase, "I am enough."
I am enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to like I said, when working in the hospitals and just showing up, being there. Really hard thing in life is validation, is showing up and going, can I do this well? Can I do this? Am I good at this? And the judgment that's there. But the waking up and saying, I am enough. I am a vessel that is capable of learning more. So if I falter here, I'm enough to fill up that with knowledge, to gain the information to do that better. It's about first showing up as yourself, and then opening that door of possibility to whatever. Right.
I also love the idea of being an ambassador, rolling into that as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for me. It's an important part of the ambassadorship, is I do have a wealth of information to pass on, and I do have room to learn more. So as an ambassador, it's not about me just going and spreading out this thing and saying, here's my buffet of information, eat.
Right.
But saying, here's my buffet of information, eat if you will, but I have spots to gain more. And please share with me your information, so that we can meld that together and we can grow together.
Right. Well, yes, and that seems to be a lot of what you're doing in all of your performances as well, is you are collaborating or standing behind the camera to figure out how this whole thing is working and rolling that into whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you also have done a lot of teaching, and I think, again, the things that you're talking about, I would assume, roll into the way you teach, and also creating space for people to find their own.
Yeah, and I think a real big shift for me in teaching was the idea that I didn't have to have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
To step into that open space that my students could also teach. And by allowing them to teach me, I was growing as a teacher, but I was also helping them not just be better students, but also see themselves as potential teachers.
Yes, right.
And there's some information and some things where you do have to work on technique.
Yeah.
But taking that technique and then saying, this is the technique, and this is how that technique works for you. Mm-hmm. So I have to listen to what their bodies are doing, because trying to get somebody, I'm 6'4", 250, 60 something pounds, to try and get somebody who's 5'7", 125 pounds to do the same thing I do would be, it doesn't, our bodies aren't going to work the same, but we'd still have to use the same technique.
Yeah.
And to be able to listen to that and go, I'm going to work with you and help you do this thing that you do. The other part of that is that as the teacher, I'm not a critic. I'm not the critic. My job is not to say you did that right or you did that wrong. What I do wind up saying a lot is, here's what I asked for and here's what you did. And sometimes they don't align, which is it's not a judgment, it's an observation.
Yeah.
And so how do we, because that helps to determine how we're going to get the end result. If the end result is you're working towards this thing over here, and I keep saying something and it's not working for you, then we're not going to get there. So we have to figure out, here's what I asked for, and here's what you did.
Yeah.
How can I say that different? Because what we're trying to do is get over to here, and you're ending up somewhere over there.
All these things you've been talking about, it's a very physical thing for the most part. Everything that you do is very physical, but you're also bringing a lot of heart into it. You have to be thinking all the time about when you're talking about teaching, or where you are if you're over being an ambassador. So you're thinking of the other people as well, but you are also bringing in a bit of a spiritual component to it as well.
Yes. Yes. So I really believe that there is a divine. There is, there are many different names for it. A God, an energy that is universal. And because we're all alive, that means that we are all connected through that same energy force. And my job is to constantly see that spark, see that thing, and connect with it. Sometimes that means that we don't connect. That my job might be that I'm not the person to connect with you. So how about maybe someone else? And so there isn't, I guess when I'm teaching, one of the things I constantly, everyone I believe will accomplish their task. It may not be my goal, but they will accomplish their task. And my job is to do my best to help them accomplish that task.
Bill, one of the other things that you have going on is Dreamcatcher Entertainment, which I know you have quite a few ongoing projects that are ongoing.
There are always ongoing projects. Yeah, Dreamcatcher Entertainment is my production company, and it's a play on things. I like Dreamcatchers. They've been a symbol for me for quite some time. And also in the circus industry, I was a catcher mainly, which meant that I caught people, I threw people. So I was the Dreamcatcher. So there's a play on words there. And Dreamcatcher Entertainment I use as my umbrella for my podcasting, my film production, and other performance stuff that I do.
Being here in Brattleboro for almost 20 years, raising 3 kids here, you've got a pretty good sense of what the community is like. How has that supported you or helped you?
The community has been very supportive for me and to me in many aspects. I've been on boards and and volunteer a lot for different things in the community, and it's really important because especially in the times that we're in right now, and with dealing with issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, racism. The reason I'm here is because this is a town that I fit in. I belong here, and we're going to have people that may not like me for whatever reason, and it's not always because I'm brown. They're we may not sync, we may not jive, and I have encountered folks who may not have particularly cared for me. But we can still coexist here, and that's what I really like about this community. And as a community, I really see that we are coming together to deal with some of the tougher issues that are facing our world right now, which is about a systemic change. And one of the things I like to talk about in that is that we talk about anti-racism, we talk about these different things, and I really think that we need to reframe the discussion and stop having wars against things, because in order to have a war against something, you need that something to fight. But start working towards things. If we want peace, let's work towards peace. If we don't want racism, let's work towards equality. And step into a space where we, as a community, are talking about what we want, not what we don't want, and loving into what we want. And I really mean that, loving in, because you can't love and add anything negative to it. Love is a positive. So when you love into something, you're stepping into it positively and fully positively.
Yes. Being such a positive person, having your kids growing up here, working here, how do you see Brattleboro? What's the glue that's holding it together, do you think?
What is the glue that's holding Brattleboro together? I don't even know. And I hope that it is a positivity. I hope that it's not a fear, because fear only holds until your muscles get tired and then we fall apart. But with the hope and that positivity and that love and that really focused intention of, this is the place that I want to be, and I want this place to be healthy for my family, and honoring some of the missteps of our ancestors, because all of our ancestors had missteps and lived and worked in those things. But in this community, I believe that we honor the ancestors even with their missteps, and we look to ourselves, and we are educating and informing the next generation on how we've made missteps, and giving them information so that they can do it better.
Yes, and that's inclusivity as well, including all of the generations in all of this.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill.
It's been my pleasure. It really was my pleasure.
It was great to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Wendy, thank you so very much for inviting me here. I'm get all a little twinkly here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It really truly is a pleasure, and I'm glad that you see me as a integral part or a necessary part of this community.
Absolutely, Bill. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much to all of you out in the audience for joining us. We really appreciate you tuning in. We have new microphones, which is something I hope that you guys took a look at. We're pretty proud of them. Hopefully the sound will be better. So thank you again for being with us. Next week we will be on with someone else from our community who will have other things to say. We're glad to have you here.